Welcome everybody to the latest BuffZone podcast. I'm Brian Howell. Please be joined by Pat Rooney. Pat, how you doing?
Doing well, Mr. Howell. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Second half of the season for football, and Buffs
Crazy.
are yeah. We say it all the time, but it feels like the season just started, and here we are starting the second half this week. Buffs sitting here at 2-4, not what they expected, not what I expected, but they got a big one against Iowa State this week, and coming off of uh, a second straight game where they blow a 14-0 lead and just doing some research and looking through the media guide. First time in program history they've ever blown 14-point leads in back-to-back games, which is crazy. They could have and maybe should have won both those games, but didn't win either one.
Yeah, and I think that's been the telling thing about this team so far. And there's different kinds of frustrations I imagine for the Buffs fans. It wasn't too long ago that they weren't even in these kind of games, right? And
Mhm.
obviously Deion Sanders comes in and they become relevant once again. But boy, what excruciating losses the last couple weeks. And Coach Deion Sanders said it during his weekly press conference. I mean, they're right there. They're
Yeah.
right there. It's whether it's a key mistake or just a brain cramp at the wrong time is holding this team back. And I don't know how you fix that. It's there's you look at plays here and there. Certainly, Caden Salter wasn't great in the first, especially in the first half at TCU. Certainly there's individual things that can be corrected there, but that idea that you can't finish games, and they haven't done it all season really. Even some of the Wyoming game that they won was not. They kind of let the Cowboys have a glimmer of a hope in the second half. So
Yeah.
I don't know how you correct that, but obviously that's what has to happen going into the second half of the season if you want to even think about turning this thing around.
Yeah. Delaware, I guess, was maybe the old one they sort of finished, but they would rotating the quarterbacks, and that was kind of a weird one anyway. But yeah, they certainly have to fix that because they've been there. They've looked really good early in these last two games, and both games that people are down on the team. You come into it like, man, they're going to get killed at TCU. They're 14-point underdogs, and they go out there, they're up 14-0. You're like, wow, they might actually win this game, and but they do things every week. Uh, you know, when I was walking to the press conference last week at TCU, there was another reporter with me, and he was just like, "This team just keeps finding new ways to lose games," and that's really what it is. And it's just that's kind of the mark of a mediocre to bad team is finding ways to lose rather than finding ways to win. And I don't know if you fix it within a season. I'm sure it's happened. I'm sure a lot of teams have done it. There's probably easy examples people will come up with, but this team's got to figure it out quickly.
There's still times I wish this team would lean even more into the running game than they are. Caden Salter to me is he's just not that great in the pocket.
Yeah,
He's good getting out of the pocket. He's making plays with his legs, obviously, but as a drop back passer, he just makes me nervous back there. I would have liked to see them run the ball in that sequence at the end of the half where he wound up throwing his third interception, kind of ruined a scoring chance that might have changed the complexion of that second half. I wanted, we were texting. I wanted a running play there. They still had a timeout in hand. Dalen Hayden had a really good drive. You kind of can open the playbook, or at least have Salter maybe attack the perimeter with his legs in that situation instead of dropping. They wound up running the same play that they ran with success early in the game. But be that as it may, just having him drop back in that situation, I didn't like it. I'd like to see them lean more into that running game than they have. It's been better than last year, as advertised. I'd like to see them take it to another, maybe even raise it a little notch. Get some of those running backs, maybe 20 carries a game. Hayden averaged almost 7 yards a carry. You take his one
yeah,
big. I was writing a little bit about him that fans will be able to read. Probably about the time that we get this podcast up. Even without his big 25-yard run, he was still averaging almost 5 yards a carry. Give him more chances. Michael Welch has run the ball well at times. Obviously, Taylor and Price look like they're going to be out again this week, but I'd like to see them lean further in that run. Jordan Seaton's the best player on the team. Run behind him and lean into that offensive line. I can't believe I'm saying that about the Buffs, but that's what they've been best at so far.
yeah. And Xavier Hill playing next to him has played really darn well too. So yeah, run behind that left side. You talk about 20 carries. uh, 15 carries. I mean, they don't give guys a dozen or 15 carries. So, um, yeah, I would like to see more of that. DeKalen Taylor's not going to play this week. I saw him the other day on one of those carts that with
Not
a
used.
walking boot. Yeah. So yeah, he was on one of those carts with a walking boot. He's not playing this week. I don't know about Simeon Price, but and then Draylen Miller is on the injury list that
No.
came out on Wednesday night as was it doubtful or questionable? I can't remember, but either way, that's not good. And so, um, you want to lean into that because even though they've had some injuries there, whenever they throw guys out there, they're doing fairly well. I'd like to see a Michael Welch or a Dallin Hayden with 15, 18 carries. What do they do? I want to see Caden Salter run the ball more because that's the one thing for as much as Caden Salter's gotten a lot of flack this year, when he's run the ball, he's looked really good. I want to see more of that. And so this team should be trying to push for 200 yards rushing.
Yeah, I agree. And Iowa State's been average. They're kind of right in the middle of the pack
Mhm.
in run defense. I think surrendering around 140. I was looking it up earlier today. It's around 140 yards a game that they're giving up. And just for the record, I was looking it up while you were talking. Doubtful right now
Okay.
for Miller on the first injury report. But I think to your point though, anyone that they've plugged in back there has generally made plays. It hasn't always been pretty, but at the end of the day, you kind of like what the yards per carry has been for this team. And I think with some of those option type plays, the modern version of it on the perimeter with Caden Salter generally have worked well. I want to see more of that. I think if this team is going to get it turned around, I don't think they do it flinging, the ball around. I still feel like Pat Shermer and Deion Sanders still feel like because it's 2025 and in modern college football, they have to fling the ball around more than they have to. I'd like to see that reined in a little bit and lean more into that running game.
Yeah, and it's interesting this week because Iowa State's top two corners are out for the year, and so this could be a game where you get some of that some of those things open, flinging the ball downfield. So, but I agree with you. I'd like to see more of that run game, and they've been doing it more the last few weeks. I give them credit. I'd just like to see them lean a little more into it, and because they got talented guys and they got the offensive line again. Weird to say it, but they got the offensive line to do it. So let's just see it more.
I also think, when it comes to the second half and close games, we've seen close games so far. I think that's going to hold true for a lot of Big 12 play the rest of the way. So in close games, how much are we trusting Caden Salter in the pocket? And that's when I get back to that last play of the first half against TCU. What do you trust more at this point? Caden Salter in the pocket or a run play with one of those running backs, or maybe Salter, making a play with his legs. Of any of those options, I trust Salter in the pocket the least. And I think in that situation and in situations, kind of going forward, not to harp on that single play, but I think going forward, when you need to make plays in those kind of tight situations in the second half, what does this team do best? And what do you trust in those kind of situations? And I think right now the run game, obviously you can't do that in 3rd and 10, but in those tight situations, need a few yards. I think you got to lean more into those guys.
Well, and the thing last week they were really good on third downs because they weren't in 3rd and 10. They were in 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3 because they were getting some nice success running the ball early on in the sequence. So yeah, we'll see how this week plays out, and let's get into predictions. How do you think it plays out?
Well, I think it'll be a close game. Maybe closer than you would think with the number kind of 22 team coming in here. But Iowa State's coming off a loss. Now that's kind of one thing that even last week when I was watching a little bit of that game for Iowa State, I'm like, do you want this team coming in here with a loss? But still, Iowa State's kind of middle of the pack overall offense, middle of the pack overall defense. I feel like this is a team that the Buffs can do some things against. But I think the Buffs are maybe lacking for confidence right now. To one of our earlier points, they're a team, the Buffs, they've given away games in the second half and not finished them. So I think until we see that, it's hard to be confident in the Buffs, especially with a solid opponent coming here. So I don't think it'll be, crazy high scoring, but I think maybe Iowa State gets out of here 28-24 in their favor. and the Buffs go into the bye trying to figure things out still.
Yeah, I'm picking a win. I think the Buffs win this one.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of times in under Deion Sanders we've seen when they're struggling on certain things, even if it's a couple weeks, they light that fire and that improves. I think we're going to see that this week in a lot of areas, and um, I think finishing has been such an emphasis. I expect them to do it. I think they're going to do it this week, and no matter how it looks, whether it's beating those corners that have been backups, or whether it's getting that run game going, I think the Buffs get a big win. I think playing in the afternoon might help. Deion Sanders has mentioned in the past how they struggle in night games, and uh, it's hard to dispute that when their losses are are at night. So they get to play in the afternoon this week, and so I think the Buffs win. I think it's going to be a good one out in Folsom Field. And I'll say this too: you mentioned Iowa State coming off a loss. The previous 3 years, when Iowa State's lost their first game, they lost the next week too.
Well,
Um,
there you go.
so this is a different team. I get it, but you see that a lot of times that a good team, might lose that first game, and then that'll kind of snowball a little bit. The Buffs need to take advantage of that.
Well, we'll see if the Buffs are happy with the earlier kickoff. I know as a beat writer, you are ecstatic about the earlier kickoff.
Yeah, I was joking with Adam Munstertiger that we actually get home on the same day the game started,
Yeah, right.
which is rare. Yeah, I won't be rolling in on Sunday morning, after a Saturday kickoff. So that'll be nice. But let's move on to a couple other sports because volleyball keeps rolling along. Soccer's playing well. Just talk briefly about those couple of sports.
Well, real quick on basketball, and I'll definitely update those teams. But basketball fans probably know this by now,
Yeah.
but just a reminder: Saturday before the football game, kind of the annual black and gold inter squad scrimmage they always hold at the event center, free to the public. So if you take time out from tailgating, get a little sneak peek of this team. I think fans will find this team, incredibly more entertaining than last year's. Maybe that's a low bar, but they're young, they're athletic, they're going to be pretty versatile. They're obviously going to take some lumps in the Big 12, but I think there's going to be kind of maybe more hope for the future, or that this thing's going to get turned around when you watch this bunch. But anyway, come on out for free at the event center on Saturday. Doors will open around 10, or at 10, I should say. The workout will begin around 10:15, and they haven't exactly announced the format, but they usually do kind of 4 10-minute quarters, mix up the matchups, and fans will get a chance to see just about everyone except Sebastian Ronchik. He suffered a sprained ankle earlier this week. It'll put a little dent into his preseason. I don't know that they'll get him ramped up in time for even next week's exhibition game at home. But they don't need to. I'm pretty confident he'll be ready for that season opener. A little less than a month away now. He didn't sustain a serious. It's a sprained ankle. It's serious for basketball, but it's not something that's going to keep him out long term. He will be sidelined this week, but give a chance for some of these other young guys to get a little more playing time going into the scrimmage. And volleyball. Huge match on Friday night. They're 5-0 now in the Big 12. Boy, they've done really well on the road. They've beat Arizona on Wednesday night. They're 3-0 in the Big 12 on the road, 5-1 overall. Huge one though on Friday night. Big test at number 8 Arizona State. Bit of a late start on Friday night at 8 o'clock. And then also the soccer team hosting Arizona State. Their only game this week at Folsom Field, 7 o'clock. They coming off a really good road trip. Would have been nice to finish off the sweep, but they got a huge win at number 7 TCU last week. Couldn't quite finish the road sweep against another ranked team at Baylor, but another team that right now they're both on track to maybe be NCAA tournament teams. Still have a way to go, but especially for soccer, it's starting to get to crunch time. So maybe get on out and watch them while you can. It should be a nice Friday night out at Prentup.
Awesome. Well, lots of big stuff for the Buffs this week. Volleyball, basketball, everything. But ends with a really important football game for the Buffs against Iowa State on Saturday at Folsom Field.
So Brian Howell's calling for a win. We'll come back next week to see if he has a chance to crow about it. And thanks everyone. As always, thanks for listening.